But America struck again. And what I mean by that is that just as we consider things that are quite cliche, like apple pie and Uncle Sam, mass shootings have become part of our American identity for quite some time now. Or it has been, rather, for quite some time. So the Kansas City Chiefs had a parade on Wednesday, and I happened to be recording my podcast. It was a pre-recorded show that just happened to air at 6. I didn't do it live that day. And this is live. And toward the end of the Kansas City Chiefs parade, gunfire broke out. 22 were shot. And an additional person was killed. This marks, if my numbers serve me correctly, recently updated, as of Wednesday, 48 mass shootings in the first 45 days, 2024. As a matter of fact, that gun rate is actually down from last year. So it's become our identity. Now, I've spoken on this issue many times in the past. I spoke about Uvalde in May of 2022. I spoke about Covenant in 2023, a year ago, and it felt very close to home in March of last year because it was in my home state of Tennessee. And I'm now speaking about it now in the Kansas City Chiefs parade. So I will speak to you and talk to you, the audience, those who are taking the time out of the day to watch or listen, in the best way I know how, and that's from the heart. So, again, mass shootings have become our identity as a country. There's a number of reasons for that. You can point to mental health. You can point to the obsession with guns in our culture. You can point to bad parenting. You can point to a lot of factors that have all culminated in what is an epidemic in this country. What is infuriating, for me at least, maybe it's because I'm Gen Z, and when certain tragedies occur, certain events occur, it hits different people different ways. And I think about this more from a generational perspective, in the sense that you have individuals in Washington that are overwhelmingly not Gen Z and less so, overwhelmingly so, not millennial. Two of the generations, and then you have Gen Alpha after Gen Z, obviously, but they're obviously not old enough to hold public office. Overwhelming majority has not had to worry about being a kid, and the reason I mentioned being a kid is because over half of the victims shot, over half the 22 victims shot, were kids in between the ages of 8 and 15. And you have individuals in positions of power who've never had to worry about this problem in their lifetimes, certainly in childhood, something unthinkable in the sense that kids deal with more from a trauma perspective in regards to gun violence than even the brave men and women who serve this country do. Even our brave troops, some of them. You think about it from the perspective that they have the power in their hands to do something about it. Not only will they not, when the many solutions are so clearly obvious, but it's the disingenuous response that we have become almost as numb to as the shootings themselves. Thoughts and prayers, heartbreaks for Kansas City, or insert any city, because it feels like every city in this country has been impacted by this horrible disease. And then move on, get back to fighting the evil other side and getting your cable news appearances in, and doing absolutely nothing to protect this generation and all generations in general. You now have a group of kids who were not shot, but now don't have a mother. Many have a story similar to this, and it drives me insane that anytime the gun discussion ever comes up, we view it, there's a lot of political issues going on in our society. You could think about immigration, think about healthcare, you could think about a lot of different things. Police reform, voting, all of the above. This gun debate, among average everyday Americans, not that much of a debate. You look at these polls. I mean, I saw one the other day from Fox News. Now, not judging conservatives, I'm a political independent. I call balls and strikes on both sides. But we would all agree Fox News isn't exactly a liberal corporation. And even they have had polls in the past, had one pretty recently, talk about how 90% of a Fox poll talked about how they want to see at least background checks. You have states like the one I'm currently residing in right now, and I'm from the state of Tennessee, where you don't even need a permit to carry a weapon, to carry a firearm. It's in this discussion where, among average everyday Americans, it's not that much of a debate. We all want to see change. Any sane person with a soul wants to see something done about this problem. But you have folks in Washington and the fringes amongst the everyday citizens who use nonsensical phrases such as, well, bad guy's going to find a way to get the gun, so why even try? Yeah, why even have laws? That's a great concept. We should apply that to a lot of things. Yeah, you know what, though? Why don't we apply that to our southern border? Why have laws? I mean, I know we've got a lot of issues in regards to that, whatever you lean politically. We got a lot of issues with the border. Why even have laws in general? If that's your logic, then simply put, I don't think you can be reasoned with. One of the arguments for years that I've pushed back on is, the only thing to stop a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun. Well, guess what? There was 800 proverbial good guys with guns, law enforcement officials in Kansas, from Kansas City and outside of it, with guns, good guys with guns, cops, law enforcement. And for the record, I'm not blaming a single one of them for this. This isn't like the Uvalde response where the police response was piss poor. It was pathetic. This isn't that situation whatsoever. Matter of fact, I think in general, the law enforcement did a pretty darn good job after the shooting happened, trying to clear it out and do the best they could with what they had. But it still happened. Now, why it happened, I think there's a few issues at play. One is obviously bad parenting. Now, we had 2 juveniles, it was reported today, taken into custody, 2 suspects, again, under the age of 18, who have firearms. Here's my question. Why do they have firearms? Well, there's 2 factors that go into that. One is it is easier to buy a gun in this country than, as Charles Barkley talked about the other day I saw, than it is to buy a car. Now, listen, buying a car, it's a process. You got to jump through different, not loopholes, but jump through different hoops in order to get the car. Purchase a gun on the black market. Heck, buy a gun online. It's yours. No worries about it. That's one of the factors. It's too easy to buy a gun. And second of all, it is inexcusably pathetic parenting. Now, I don't know the home situations of these individuals who committed these heinous crimes. No idea. But obviously there was not some sort of role figure. Now, the problem with that is you can't really legislate parenting. Now, I do know there was a shooting recently, because there's so many, more shootings than there are days in the year, over and over and over and over. And a matter of fact, the rate is actually down this year, which makes it all the more depressing. That they put one mother in prison whose son committed a shooting for decades. And I believe the father is going to go on trial soon. Maybe that's a way to address that from a legal perspective. But again, in regards to the easy access to firearms, in regards to all of these issues, the answers are right there. I was thinking about this, how if we had as many people killed this year by food poisoning as we have by guns, if there was an epidemic where people were dropping like flies because of the food that they were consuming at restaurants or buying from grocery stores, that the food was bad for them and it was killing them, my guess is we probably take a step back and say, okay, something's up with the FDA or whatever, and we probably need to go in and fix this situation, because a lot of people are dying like crazy from food poisoning. We would address it. Heck, when 9/11 happened in 2001, airport security changed forever, and obviously for the better, to prevent such a horrible event like that from ever happening again. Anytime any sort of crisis happens, in almost any other instance, we tend to address it. I mean, seatbelts in cars decades ago, all of the above. But with this issue, we all of a sudden become, we, not as in the American people, because in general we tend to agree on many of the solutions to this problem. We have those in Washington and those in the fringes who all of a sudden become so close-minded and illogical in their arguments, in their cases, that somehow, some way, you should have kids out here with weapons. We have members in Congress who thinks the gun culture is somehow sexy. I can think of one in particular. Hey, screw it. This is a major event. Well, I'll say the person's name. Lauren Boebert of Colorado, who years ago had a Christmas card where all of her kids under the age of 18 had firearms in their Christmas card. The culture also plays factor into this. How somehow, some way, having a weapon that can kill many people at a time is all of a sudden something we should celebrate, or think is this idea of what it is to be a patriotic American, whatever the heck that means. And because of this, because of all these factors, you have my generation, the generation before mine, and the one after mine, that has been robbed of basic, and not just our generations, but in particular, because this is all we know, and even generation before us, because they've been obviously involved in these mass shootings, is robbed of an ability to do something. Add this to the list: to go to a celebration for a championship, the Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs, to commemorate, to come together as a city. How often? This is why I love doing a sports show. I couldn't do a political show 3 times a week for an hour and a half a day. It's a lot. Not that much time on, as much time as I spend on sports, I couldn't spend it on politics, because it tends to bring you down the longer you spend on it. But sports, why I love it, it's the one thing that brings us together. That and music. Because I can guarantee you, of the over 1 million people in that parade, involved in that parade, there were different races of people, ethnicities, religious backgrounds, socioeconomic statuses, sexual preferences, people, religions, all different type of individuals who all came together for one celebratory purpose: to commemorate the hometown champion Kansas City Chiefs. Couldn't even do that. Kids got off school. A lot of businesses were closed for the day because basically they shut the whole city down because of how big the parade is and the route and how many people are going to show up. Can't even do that. Go to parade, go to school, go to church, go to a movie theater, go to a grocery store. You name it, it's probably not safe from gunfire. And so you have a generation of people who are trained to somehow, some way be aware of, okay, if a shooting happens, here's my exit strategy. In school, in parades, anywhere else. Where's my exit strategy? Where's the nearest door? Where's the nearest window? I'd be remiss if I didn't say that that's part of my own personal psychology. If I'm in a room, in a public space, anywhere, where's the exit door? How do I get out of here if, God forbid, something happens? And we have allowed this to happen. Those who have the decision-making ability have allowed this to permeate our society, and it's who we are as America. Mass shootings is a part of our culture. It's not just a part of our culture, it's who we are. I saw this stat from Everytown today about how the U.S. gun homicide rate is 26 times higher than that of other high-income countries. Ours is at 4.38. Second place is France at 0.4. They're at 0.4. We're at 4.38. 26 times higher than France and even higher than other developed countries. It's who we are. Now, if I can be a bit optimistic, I do believe that this is going to be fixed one day. I really do. Because I think when you have generations like mine, one's before me, one's after me, that are going to one day, in some cases, for me personally and for others, this year, going to have the ability to vote, to put people out of a job who obviously don't give to, what's that people getting shot dead in the streets and dead in any public place in America every day, that eventually it's going to be a strength in numbers situation, and we will be able to elect people who do care, who do have the most basic level of human empathy to address this. But why should we have to wait for that? Why should this be something where we have to sit back? Okay, we just got to wait for my generation and others to get older, to have the ability to vote, then address it. More kids are going to die. More adults are going to die. Men, women, children, and these clowns in office, because that's what they are, do nothing. Now, the fact of the matter is we have had other quote-unquote identities as a country, and we have many different ways to describe America. The land of opportunity. However you want to do that. 150 years ago, as recently as that, we were a country that permitted, 160 years ago, we were a country that permitted owning people. It was who we were. Didn't make it right, but that's who we were. Thankfully, due to the work of brave abolitionists, eventually got policy changed, and of course, we don't own anybody here anymore. But it was still part of our identity. This is our identity. It's who we are as America. It's heartbroken, and I'm tempted so often when something like this happens. I am tempted to give up. I'm tempted to say, you know what? It is our identity, and nobody's going to change anything about it, so why bother? If we do that, then those who are cool with this happening win. And this will keep happening every single day. There is no one solution. There is no one source to the problem. But when you don't even put in the effort to look at all of these and try and put in legislation to address all of these, you're going to get what happened in Kansas City, Missouri, and what's happened virtually everywhere in this country. It's who we are. It's what we do in America. We have mass shootings. I don't want to ever listen. America is, we hear in the national anthem, the land of the free and the home of the brave. We are certainly the home of the brave, and in many respects, we are the land of the free. In this area, we are simply not free. Because if you can't go to a grocery store, a school, a church, a synagogue, a mosque, a championship parade, and feel safe, then my friends, you are not free. None of us are until we make the necessary changes to address this issue. I am gutted for Kansas City. I'm gutted for everybody who had this awesome moment in their life stripped from them by who we are as America. And it's infuriating. Almost every show, and I've done this since the Covenant shooting in March of 2023. I end the show. One of the things I said in the show closeout is, please be sure to contact your local state representatives and senators to demand change for gun violence in America. Because I think there's a lot of issues in this election, and we don't even have to. It take a 10-part podcast series to get into all of them. But what bothers me is it seems like every election cycle, every 2 years, every 4 years, that this isn't even the topic of discussion. It's infuriating. Makes me sick to my stomach, and I just hope that we can somehow wake up, make our voices heard at the ballot boxes in November, put the disingenuous clowns out of office who refuse to do anything, and prevent something like this from happening again.